Hey dudes, I'm Hilah, and today on Hilah Cooking, I've got a variation for your Thanksgiving table. We're gonna do a roast duck with a pomegranate glaze. Now, if you are from ye old England or you are a hunter, you might be pretty familiar with duck, but other people, this might be something new. So I'm really excited to share it with you. This is a special request from my buddy Kyle. So this one's for you, Kyle. What the duck? Okay, so I've got my duck here, and this is about a 5-pound duck. The thing about duck is it's got a lot more fat under the skin than turkey or chicken, so it's got to be treated a little bit differently. If you are a hunter or you know a hunter and you're using a wild duck though, it's probably going to have a little bit less fat than this one. But before I get my hands all ducky, I'm going to set this over here a little bit and work on my spice rub. I'm using several different things here. Duck is a really dark meat. If you've ever had quail, it's similar to quail in flavor to me. And it really can stand up well to strong flavors, things that you might normally see on like beef or lamb. I'm going to start out with some Szechuan peppercorns. These are actually not related to black peppercorns at all. They're used in Chinese 5-spice. You can see their interesting little shape here. Kind of smells like lavender, but to me it kind of tastes spicy and piney and earthy and woody and wintry and all that shit. Okay, got some of that in there. I've got some fennel seed, and this is a little bit of sweetness for our duck. So I'm gonna grind these together. Use your muscles. Try to get it as fine as you can. It smells delicious. And if you can't find the Szechuan peppercorns, you can just use black pepper. It's totally fine. That looks good. Now I'm gonna add in some coriander. This is already ground, and coriander is kind of a citrusy, orangish kind of flavor, I think. A couple teaspoons of salt, and some paprika. And the paprika is mostly for color, honestly, just to give it a nice, rich burnish. So let's mix those together. And then I'm gonna zest in the zest of one orange. And when you're zesting, you just want to make sure you only get the colored part of the skin. Stop once you reach that pale pith there, because that part is where all the bitterness is. And the zest, the outer part, is where all the flavor is. Flavor country. So however much that is, it's about a teaspoon. That'll do just fine. And now we can set this aside while we get our hands all gross. So I've taken off my rings. Look, it's like I'm not married anymore. Now accepting proposals, gents or ladies. Just kidding, that's a terrible joke. I love you, husband. Okay, so I trimmed off a lot of the fat and excess skin already just to save you the gross factor. But you can see, so here's the butt end. There's still quite a bit of fat and skin here. Don't get grossed out, guys. So I just want to trim that off. And you can save this and render it to give yourself some delicious duck fat that you can use to fry potatoes and eggs and things like that. And I will give you instructions on how to do that on my website at highlighcooking.com if you want to render your own duck fat. So, okay. That looks pretty good. All right, now here's the deal. So under the skin, there's a lot of extra fat, and we want to make some holes in the skin so that that fat can render out while the duck cooks. So what I'm gonna do, some people stab it, I'm gonna cross-hatch it over the breast, and you just want kind of a small sharp knife and cut through the skin, but don't pierce the actual meat. I mean, if you do, it's not the end of the world. These little areas here where there's extra kind of fat, I'm just gonna hold my knife almost parallel to the skin and just make a few holes like that to let that fat render out while it cooks. And we'll flip it over and do a little bit on this side too. So same thing, just where these little extra fatty areas are around the joints. Oh, and I wanted to mention too, a lot of people want to rinse a whole bird, like a turkey or a chicken or a duck, before they cook it. I really advise against that, unless you're eating the bird raw, which no one is. When you cook it, any kind of bacteria that's on the surface of the bird is going to get cooked and killed and become negligible. And when you rinse it in your sink, there's a high possibility that you're actually just spraying salmonella and germs like all over the kitchen, everywhere that water splashes off to. So, as I fling my hand that way, okay. Anyway, so you can rinse it if it makes you feel better, but it's really not necessary and it's potentially dangerous. Good. Now I'm just gonna get my spice rub, and I wanna rub some on the inside. This part's a little, that's what it feels like inside a duck. Kind of gross. Oh my God. Super gross. Okay. Just get it all in these little, see, I went all the way through, but it didn't actually pierce the meat, so we're still good. Once your bird is all rubbed down, get that orange that you had zested, and we're gonna save the juice. We're gonna make a little glaze with that later. And then tuck that shell into the cavity. And that one too. Get in there. And I've got some fresh rosemary. Hey, look guys, I do use rosemary sometimes. And I'm just gonna break that up and stick that in there too. Get some over on this side, buddy. And then we're gonna just tie the legs together with a little bit of kitchen twine. This is optional. It's just gonna kind of make the whole thing look a little prettier in the end. Don't need to pull it super tight, but just like that. And now for the really gross part. Just kidding, it doesn't get any grosser than that. I'm just gonna put this in the fridge for 2 hours and up to 24 hours. Leave it uncovered. I know it seems a little weird, but you want the skin to kind of dry out a little bit. So we're gonna put it in the fridge until we need it, until we're ready for it. Okay, after a few hours in the fridge, our duck looks pretty much exactly like it did when we put it in there. I'm gonna put it in a 450-degree oven, and then as soon as I put it in, I'm gonna turn the heat down to 350, and we're gonna roast it for about 20 minutes per pound. So this was about a 5 pound, that'd be about 100 minutes, so an hour and 40 minutes or so. So the only thing, yeah, just remember to turn the heat down as soon as you put it in. But if you don't, it probably will be fine too. I don't know, it's fine. Okay, I've taken my duck out. I checked the temperature here between the thigh and the body. You want to cook the duck until that is 180, but I took it out when it was about 165 because I'm going to put a glaze on it and then put it back in the oven. So the oven's heating up back to 450 right now. And I just use this little suction deal. If you have a turkey baster, that's actually a much better tool to use than this shitty thing. But I just sucked out most of the fat, put it in a little cup. You can make some French fries with it later. You'll thank me. So this is the orange juice that we squeezed at the beginning, and a tablespoon of honey. And then I've got some pomegranate molasses here. This is ancient. I've had this for a long time, but still good. So we're gonna add some of that, and this is very tart, very concentrated pomegranate flavor. If you don't want to use this or you can't find this, any like Middle Eastern store will carry it, but cherry preserves or something like that would be good, and you could just leave the honey out. So a couple tablespoons of that and get that mixed up. I just wanna generously douse it, and the skin is nice and crispy, and this is just gonna kind of glaze it and make it shiny and a little bit sticky and delicious. Awesome blossom. I'm gonna put this back in at 450, remember, for about 15 minutes until that glaze is set, and then we'll let it rest for another 15 minutes before we carve it. Okay, my beautiful duck is done. The temperature in the thigh is 180 degrees. I went ahead and garnished it. I've got some people coming over here in a minute to eat this, so I don't want to cut it up just yet. But if you check out my roasted chicken video, then I show you how to cut up chicken there, and it's the same thing. The anatomy is all the same, so I'm sure you can figure it out. But there you go. There's a beautiful duck recipe for you. Also, something else that goes well with this is the roasted Brussels sprouts that I did last fall, so check that out. Please remember to subscribe and check out HilahCooking.com for printable recipes. Bye!